I am speaking to our state senator, Bruce Tarr, as I do every week. Good afternoon, Senator. How are you?
Good afternoon, Heather. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Good. I'm good.
It's
Um,
nice to see that bright Cape Ann sunlight streaming through the windows at your house.
no.
I think we're all very eager to be outside and take advantage of it.
Yeah. There is approximately $8 billion arriving from the American Rescue Plan into Massachusetts. Now, there's more money, but the $8 billion, as I understand it, is designated to state and local governments. Is that right?
Well, I can't say that with certainty. In fact, one of the things that a lot of people are doing on Beacon Hill right now, including me and my staff, are trying to figure out how much money goes directly to its intended recipients versus how much money is going to be appropriated through state government. And as we are here right now talking, I can't give you a clear answer. We're actually trying to figure that out. And the other thing we're trying to figure out is that for the money that comes through state government that then gets appropriated, what are the conditions that attach to spending that money? Because right now, Heather, as we've talked about in the past, we're in the middle of putting together the state budget for the coming fiscal year that begins on July 1st. And we had not incorporated any of that federal money from the ARP into the state budget so far. We've agreed on a revenue estimate that shows progress from last year, but we have not calculated into that revenue estimate new federal spending from that emergency bill to respond to COVID-19. So as we speak, it is one of the most important questions on Beacon Hill. Now, to go a little further, last week I met with the Senate Chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, whose job is to basically write the budget along with the rest of us who are on the committee. And I asked what it was going to be in terms of the likelihood of plunking some of that money into the budget that we are writing right now. And his opinion was that we weren't really going to try to harmonize those two things, that we'd likely pass a budget and then as time goes by, spend the federal money based on what we learn about it over time. So again, there were hearings today by the Ways and Means committees, and we're rapidly moving toward putting together a budget. And it is a very important question as to how federal money is going to influence that budget. And there is no clear answer to that yet.
So let me just review what you just said. At this point, there is money coming from the American Rescue Plan to Massachusetts, and some of that is designated specifically for state and local government. Is that right?
That's correct.
But it's not clear to you in our legislature how much.
We're trying to sort out, again, which silo things go in. And maybe it's easier to think about it in three silos. So one silo is basically unrestricted aid to municipalities and states. And that money would be programmed through some spending document. In this case, probably not the regular state budget, but maybe some of it will find its way into that. So one category, unrestricted assistance. Second category is money that comes to the state, but has conditions attached as to how it can be spent. And so I would call that restricted for the purpose of this conversation. And then there's a third category where dollars are going directly from the federal government to their intended recipients without the state being the arbiter in the middle. And what we're all working on right now is figuring out what is in each of those three categories. I actually have a staff person almost completely dedicated to that. And the Ways and Means Committee has other staff members that are working on that as well. And so I'd like to be able to give you a clearer answer, but it would be irresponsible for me to do that. And hopefully soon we can talk about where that money is going to go and how it's going to get there, because both of those are important questions as we write the state budget.
No, that's really helpful. That's actually exactly the answer I was looking for. So at this point, when does the money start arriving? Let's ask you that question.
Well, that's, again, I can't give you a clear answer. I wish I could. Maybe, next week we can talk about that in terms of when we're going to start to see it. But hopefully it will be soon. And again, hopefully some of it will go out directly to its intended recipients, so there's no delay with us having to take action in the middle.
Mm. And in the past, with any sort of federal funding arriving like this, what has been the protocol for making these decisions? How does the legislature decide how to do it? You're saying that's what you're doing right now. How does that
So
work?
that's exactly right. And it's a great question. So we have a set of priorities that we're trying to respond to, and we would be doing that in the budget even if we didn't get federal money. And so the priorities are things like making sure our schools can be successful because they've experienced an enormous amount of disruption as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Making sure that people have housing, both rental housing, and we're also looking at housing production for the future. Making sure that people have a um, good access to food. And that has two parts: food that we're producing, and we think we can be producing a lot more in Massachusetts than we are, and the way that folks access that food through our food banks and through other outlets. So those are the kind of things that we're looking at. And what you're likely to see is an alignment of our priorities with the money that's coming in so that we can apply that to our priorities. Now, clearly, the federal government has its own set of priorities, and our representatives and senators have worked on those and incorporated them into the bill. And there may be things that are not what we have thought of as priorities, but that are equally as important. And harmonizing those will be important. And that's where I think, we'll see some interplay between the state legislators and the federal legislators to say, how do we make sure that we carry out your intent as you're providing us with these dollars? And how do we make sure that we respond to the priorities that we've identified from every day talking to folks who clearly have some important needs right now, and those needs are pressing.
Hmm. Well, we have already seen one glaring issue arrive between the congressional delegation and our people back in Massachusetts just trying to scramble to manage issues on the ground. And that is the conflict between the MBTA and the congressional delegation. The MBTA, trying to piece things together, had said we need to lay off people, we need to have service cuts. And, particularly Representative Lynch was like, whoa, wait a minute, we just got you $1 billion. What's going on? The MBTA has backed off that, and they've reversed course and promised no service cuts and no layoffs. But do you foresee any other conflicts like this as the money arrives and yet people are still scrambling in Massachusetts?
I think we could see them. Again, I think you're going to see the two templates for these are the state's priorities and these are the federal government's priorities. And there may be some conflict between those. I think it's going to be a time for some unprecedented conversation between federal officials and state officials. There certainly could be some issues around education and where we're spending education money. I'll give you an example right now. There is a debate going on about what to do with MCAS. And so the federal government will not allow us to suspend MCAS for the entire year. Commissioner Riley at Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has looked to scale back MCAS and postpone it for a period of time. There are others, particularly superintendents in our region at the North Shore Superintendents Roundtable, have suggested that this may be a good year not to have MCAS at all. But it was pointed out to us at our last meeting with that group that right now we can't do that. And so that's an example of where everybody cares about education, but people might have different perspectives on how to advance the common goal. And I think you might see more of those. And one of the reasons that you might see more of them is we're in many ways in uncharted territory. So we've been planning and budgeting, assuming that we wouldn't get federal money, because I think that was the prudent thing to do, and I agree with it. But now we have to determine, how does the federal money that's coming in affect what we should be doing? And so let me be more specific. We want to make sure that we don't build all of these billions of dollars into the state budget when we may not get them in the future. And because that would make our budget horribly unsustainable, and we don't want to do that. So we need to think about what the Congress has in mind. Are we looking at something that is a one-time appropriation, or are we looking at things where they're trying to signal to us that over time we intend to continue to invest in these things? And Massachusetts, you should be aware of that, and you should think about how to incorporate these going forward, as opposed to a spot fix kind of a situation.
I mean, this American Rescue Plan seems to be an incredible shot of good news and optimism for so many people in this country. But it's so interesting to understand how you will have to navigate this at the
You know,
state level.
it is good news. These resources are important. We need them, but we also have to make sure that they hit the ground the right way so that they can have the right effect and maximize their benefit.
Exactly. Well, thank you again, and we will talk to you next week.
Thanks. I very much look forward to that.